Hey, how's it going, Five fans? Welcome to mindforcombat. If you're new to this channel, my name's Rohan. It's my platform where I do MMA and boxing related content. If you're new here, why don't you help me grow my channel? All you have to do is hit that subscribe button, like the video, dislike it if you don't, and maybe get involved in the conversation in the comment section below. Anyways, with that said, for this video I'm going to be breaking down a fight that in my mind would have been a super fight and I wish it would have happened. You see, recently I was reading an article and Rich Franklin was saying one of the two fights that he wished he could have had in his career was against Michael the Count Bisping. And that got me thinking, it's quite crazy that they actually never fought. You see, Rich Franklin was a once middleweight champion and he kind of fluctuated between middleweight and like heavyweight, and actually what he called Franklin weight, what was affectionately known as Franklin weight, which was 195. Michael Bisping started his career off at 205, then went down to 185, and he became a champion as well. Both of these guys have headlined many cards, and they weren't actually that dissimilar in age. I think there was a 5-year age gap between them. So this is a fight that I wish would have played out. This fight would have been very interesting. It's two pioneers of sports, two guys that really impacted the sport in a lot of ways, and two guys that were true warriors and true gentlemen of the sport. They both won world titles, and in a lot of ways, this is actually a super fight or a metaphorical dream fight that in my mind slipped away and I hadn't given it consideration up until Rich Franklin brought it up. So with that said, let's break down this fight and see exactly how it would have played out. So what I like to do is look at the tape, and the first stat that jumps out is their age. Obviously, there's a 5-year difference between them. As it stands, Michael Bisping is 40, Rich Franklin is 45. That's irrelevant in this because this is a hypothetical super fight. And let's just say this happens in both of their best runs. So when Rich Franklin had just won the world title, even though I do feel like he improved a little bit after that, but let's say when he was champion as opposed to when Michael Bisping was champion. Now, I don't think Michael Bisping was actually at his best when he was champion, which is funny because he was a world champion at that time, whereas other times in his career he didn't win the belt. It's just that's the way it worked out. But when he was a champion is probably the peak of his career. So we'll take it with his pinnacle, with Rich Franklin's pinnacle, which probably definitively when they were both world champions. Makes sense, right? Michael Bisping retired from the world of mixed martial arts with a professional record of 30 wins and 9 losses. Obviously, he retired on back-to-back losses. The loss to George St. Pierre in a fight that actually was pretty competitive, despite what everyone will have you believe. Michael Bisping was starting to do some real damage on St. Pierre before he got finished. And the ill-fated decision to fight Kelvin Gastelum for some reason, when he got knocked out in the first round, that was a poor decision. Rich Franklin also retired off a loss when he got knocked out by Kong Lee in 2012. Now that fight was just a poor reflection of just how good Rich Franklin was. He was fighting really sloppy, got really lazy. Kong Lee, being as experienced as he was, especially in the striking realm, was able to take advantage of Rich Franklin's sloppiness and put him out. That was not a reflection on his career. Rich Franklin was actually a very great fighter. And he had a professional record when he retired of 29-7 with 1 no contest. I completely digressed there. But yeah, Michael Bisping had a record of 30-9. Rich Franklin had a record of 29-7. They both, in terms of size, were virtually identical. They were both 6'1", and they both had a 76-inch reach. Actually, Michael Bisping had a 75.5-inch reach, but that half-inch reach, you know, we can play it out. They were both very similarly built in terms of frame. Rich Franklin and Michael Bisping were a good size match. Makes it even worse. Now, when we're looking at their styles, again, there was a lot of similarities. But for Michael Bisping, his style was kind of based around his cardio and movement. He liked to circle a lot, and he was a striker. Yes, he could mix it all in. He could wrestle as he had to, like he did with Brian Stan. But I think where Michael Bisping really shined was his pressure striking in volume. He wasn't a heavy hitter, but he had great conditioning, great chin, great cardio, kept up going, kept pressure, and he moved a lot, and then he used his striking to kind of win points and win fights. For Rich Franklin, he was also well-rounded, and I think he also enjoyed the striking realm of the game. While he could do everything, I felt like Rich Franklin's best work was done on the feet. Some of his best stoppages, Nate Corey, Chuck Liddell, etc., all on the feet. So yeah, this would have been a good stand-up striking fight. Let's look at some of the key wins. Now, both of these guys have very lengthy and respected resumes. They're both very decorated fighters. We'll start with Michael Bisping, whose earlier wins included guys like Chris Lieben and Akiyama. I'm not going to count Matt Hamill because I didn't feel like he won that fight, so I'm not going to count that as a key win. So that's something to consider there. He beat Mayhem Miller, who's a guy who once upon a time I respected a lot, was a really good fighter, was someone who done a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, he beat Brian Stan. Brian Stan was a top contender for a long time. That was a good fighter. He beat Alan the Talent Belcher. Alan the Talent Belcher was one of my favourite fighters once upon a time. He was a guy that I fought a lot of everything except for his ugly ass tattoo, but I really liked Alan Belcher, and that was a good win for Michael Bisping to be able to get. Then obviously the best run of his career came when he had beaten guys like Kong Lee, Talis Latis. He beat Anderson Silva. That was an incredible victory. He revenged Luke Rockhold loss by knocking him out and probably sending his career into a downward spiral. Then he eventually lost to Dan Henson. Dan Henson was 45 years old. Oh, same age as Rich Franklin is now. Quite interesting, actually. And yeah, so that was some of the key wins on his record. So he had some really good wins. For Rich Franklin, when we're looking at his key wins, you go back in time, you look at guys like Evan Tanner, a former world champion who he beat not once but twice. That was a really good win. He knocked out Nate Corey in that brutal knockout win that went viral, one of the first earliest viral knockouts in UFC. He beat guys like Ken Shamrock. That's how long ago Rich Franklin was fighting. He actually went into that fight as a huge underdog. That was after Ken Shamrock had just lost a controversial fight to Sakuraba, so there was a lot of interest coming into that fight. A lot of the younger viewers may not remember that, but that was actually a big fight at the time when it happened. Was Rich Franklin versus Ken Shamrock. He beat Yushin Okami. Yushin Okami is a staple in the top 5 for a long time in the middleweight division. That's a win that must be respected. He beat Matt Hamill, actually beat Matt Hamill. He beat Vanderlei Silva not once but twice, an all-time great. And of course he beat Chuck Liddell, knocked him out and sent him into retirement right before his ill-fated decision to come out and fight Tito again for some whatever reason. Anyways, some of the issues. For Michael Bisping, I always found him to be a little bit hittable, and I'm not going to say that he was chinny because I've actually found him to be really durable, but he was a fighter that could be put out, as we saw in fights. Obviously, he historically was only stopped by heavy hitters, but he was a guy who was hittable, and I think Rich Franklin qualifies as a heavy hitter. Secondly, I would say that his power, his punching power being as low as it was, meant that fighters were more willing to engage with him and really get involved, and that's what made him a lot more hittable as well, because the consequences or repercussions of getting in close weren't really there. Where Michael Bisping shined was the pressure. For Rich Franklin, I would say some of his issues included that he was also hittable, and he was in a lot of ways I found Rich Franklin to be kind of predictable. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think in this case Michael Bisping, who was a creative footwork based striker, could exploit that. The X factor for Michael Bisping, in my opinion, would have been his conditioning. Now, whilst I would say Rich Franklin was a well-conditioned athlete, Michael Bisping had a vast advantage there. And for the X factor for Rich Franklin would have been his power. He had the power to put Michael Bisping out, in my opinion. Now, how does the fight play out? How does it go? Let me get into my prediction. Firstly, I think this fight definitely would have been fought on the feet. They were both really sound defensive wrestlers, and I think they both favoured the striking game, so this fight would have been fought on the feet. Whilst Rich Franklin, I believe, would have maybe hit harder than Michael Bisping, I believe Michael Bisping would have enjoyed a technical advantage and have been able to pepper him up from the distance as he was circling. The difference is that I always found that Rich Franklin was actually able to mix up his striking pretty damn well in this fight. This is actually a very 50-50 fight that I'm finding it really hard to pick a side on. I think the difference here is that Rich Franklin carried power, and then whilst Michael Bisping was a superior technical striker, in my opinion, he wasn't vastly superior to the point where he just would have outskilled Rich Franklin all night. I don't see it happening. Yes, he would have been able to mix it up, but I think Rich Franklin would have been able to survive on the feet when he mixed it up. Where he would have been around and Rich Franklin carried power, I think he would have hit him and he would have hurt him, and then he would have been able to get the finish. So fight fans, for my official prediction, I think that although Michael Bisping would have had a lot of success in this fight and it would have been a competitive fight, I believe that Rich Franklin would have been able to land and hurt Michael Bisping enough time to either A, get the finish, and even if he doesn't get the finish, score enough points in the rounds to be able to win a unanimous decision. So my official prediction would have been that Rich Franklin would have been able to beat Michael Bisping. Now that's painful for me to say as a British mixed martial arts fan, but actually both of these guys are pioneers and legends of sport, and I think a lot of both of these guys and Michael Bisping very well could have won that fight. And it actually pains me to say that Franklin would have probably beat him. I don't know though, just my opinion. Fight fans, I want to know what you guys think, how this fight would have played out. What do you think about this potential fight? And when you hear this fight mentioned, does it appeal to you guys as much as it appeals to me? I'll be very interested to know what you guys thought. Anyways guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you're new here, subscribe to my channel, help me grow my platform. Share out the video to your friends and family, and comment below with your thoughts on the breakdown and give me any criticism you like. Thank you for watching guys. I'm Rohan and this is Mindful Combat. Thank you.